However, one agricultural association thinks President Trump's tariffs are leveling the playing field. Earlier this week, I talked with Ethan Lane from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. He joins us sharing why some livestock owners feel these actions are long overdue. Hi, Ethan. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, first off, tell us why you think that these tariffs could be a good thing for some farmers and ranchers and cattlemen in our area.
Look, tariffs are a tool. They shouldn't be the end goal. They I don't think they are the end goal, but they are a tool that President Trump, in particular, believes very strongly in. He has been a fan of tariffs. If you go all the way back to things he said in the early 1980s, this is a tool he very much believes the U.S. should be using to engage in these negotiations. And quite frankly, we find ourselves at a point where a lot of our supply chains, whether they be agricultural supply chains or others, have sort of suffered from years of being part of kind of the incentive package in international relations. Whether there are challenges with other countries, objectives our government wants to achieve, offering access to our market for their goods has long been a bargaining chip. And the end result of that is production in the United States, whether it be beef or cars or whatever else, sometimes can suffer because of that. So we are supportive of the president using these tools to try to balance the scales in these trade relationships. We need export markets. We need access to foreign buyers of our products, in particular beef in our case. The things we send to those overseas markets are typically things that we don't sell here in the U.S. And so we're hopeful the president can use this tool to get some better access, get some of those non-tariff trade barriers lowered, and then hopefully bring all those tariffs back down as a result of that.
Exactly. And your website says that Australia, for example, has sold about $29 billion of beef to American consumers, but that the U.S. has not been able to sell a dollar of fresh U.S. beef into Australia because of some non-scientific barriers. Can you tell us about those barriers? What's stopping these sales?
Sure. So here's how these shakedowns kind of go. You do a free trade agreement, right? And you agree, okay, we're gonna allow free access for products from both directions. And in the case of Australia, they immediately started using that access to ship fresh beef into the United States. The vast majority of that is lean beef trimmings, which is what we're short on in the U.S. supply chain. We raise the best quality, highest marbled beef in the world, but what that does, it produces lean ground beef. So that's kind of what we tend to look for extra of from other countries, and Australia can provide that, which they've done with gusto for 20 years. But while doing that, they have continued to find paperwork hurdles and approvals and clearances, and gosh, we need to check the status of this program before we can allow you the same access to the Australian market. And they've played this game and run this con for 20 years now. And that's really what we're getting at here is, even if the tariff rate is effectively zero, if you can't actually access the market because of game playing, they have erected what we call a non-tariff trade barrier. We see the same thing in China. We see the same thing in Europe. This is a tool of many protectionist countries to keep better quality goods like what's produced in the United States out of their marketplaces.
Well, obviously, you've taken a different approach, a different public approach than a lot of other ag groups, and ag is pretty well connected. So do you think that this long-term gain for maybe the cattlemen is also long-term gain for all of agriculture?
I think all of these different supply chains are different. We have the luxury of not being overly committed to any one market. There's not any one foreign market that's buying, 40% of what we produce or 80% of what we produce. We'd like to keep all of those markets. We'd like to grow all of those markets. But if one goes away, it doesn't mean catastrophic destruction to our industry. I think some other commodities have evolved to a point where they really have a lot of dependence on one foreign market or two foreign markets. They have a different set of circumstances. They have a different set of concerns. I wouldn't dream of trying to speak for those other commodities. I can only really speak for the beef supply chain. But yeah, the conditions are such that for us, we have producers across the country who believe the president is doing the right thing here and is going to achieve some goals that are really helpful to our industry, and that's why we've taken the position that we've taken.
Well, Ethan, thank you so much for taking some time to talk today. We appreciate you weighing in on this topic. Well, Ethan, he had more insight to share, and you can find the rest of his thoughts tonight on the extended version of Ag on 8. This week, I also talked with a farmer in Iowa whose family made the most of a big move during World War II. Those stories can be found tonight on the 8 Plus app. The app's available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV.